Hi, welcome to Pod Potatoes with Mark Selzer, and today we have Tequila Mockingbird, and she is how would we describe you, Tequila?
A punk historian.
A punk historian. She runs the Punk Rock Museum, and she was, when did you start hanging around the scene in L.A.?
Well, I started hanging around the scene in '74 in New York and Boston. So my first friends were like the Ramones and the New York Dolls, who told me to look for the Sex Pistols, that they'd be coming to America.
Really?
Yeah, so that's how I got pretty much in. I hung around with Klaus Nomi.
Oh, really?
And when I was in Boston, I'd hang around Aerosmith. And Bowie would come through, and I knew everyone because I worked with WBCN, the radio station.
Oh, really? And what was that?
It was a radio station in Boston. It's still a radio station in Boston. And I created something called Geisha with my girlfriends. And we would meet rock stars and make sure that they had whatever they wanted. So if they wanted, say, Yes would come to town, and we would get vegetarian food for them. And Roxy Music would come to town, and we know what Brian Ferry might want. Beautiful girls, we'd order up for him and ride around in his limousine and drink his champagne. So I originally started I was always in music, always hanging out with musicians since I was 12, when I first hung out with Led Zeppelin backstage.
Oh, really?
I looked 15, so.
Really? So they liked you?
Yeah, they only like young girls.
So were you ever at CBGB's?
I went through there. I went through all those different clubs.
The clubs? And
club scene. But I was underage.
Right. You met the Ramones then?
Yeah, I went and saw them play. The first time I saw them play, they threw down their instruments and started beating the crap out of each other. And I knew I was on to something big then.
You were in love.
I was like, oh, wow, these people are out of control. That must be cool.
Wow. So, the New York Dolls, he was a great actor there for a while, Poindexter. Now the New York Dolls got back together, and they did a new album too, which is actually good. Usually when punk bands get back together, the albums usually suck. But
I was never big. David's always been a dick to me.
Really?
I'm Sylvain's friend, and Arthur Kane and I worked together for years in the movies. After the band broke up, we were all extras in tons of movies together. So I spent a lot of time with Arthur Kane, and I still am friends with Sylvain.
Oh, really? He has albums. I have his albums, but they're all pop.
Yeah, he's a pop guy.
They're the pop.
He's better at making clothes.
Really?
Yeah, all the Dolls' clothes were because of Sylvain.
Really? The red leather.
No,
outfit?
that was because of Malcolm McLaren.
Oh, okay.
Malcolm wanted them to dress like socialists and communists, and he thought that would be the new thing for the Dolls, and it destroyed them.
It destroyed them. Yeah, that's not a good audience for them. I don't know. It's a lot of conformity. So then, how did you end up in L.A.?
I came to see the Sex Pistols.
Oh, really? You got stuck in L.A.?
Yeah, I actually came as soon as I heard the Sex Pistols were going to come to America. Sylvain told me that was a band that I needed to see. He also told me to go hang out at the Rainbow. So I came to California in 1976, waiting for the Sex Pistols and hanging out at the Rainbow for when they would show up.
And they never showed up?
No, not really. Sid and Nancy showed up at the Mask, the second Mask. But all the people with the Mask to me were a mess, and I didn't want to hang around with them. But I was dating the guy who cleaned the Mask.
Oh, really?
So I would look out the window and watch the whole scene develop, and then the next morning we'd have to hose out all the needles and.
Really?
and puke.
Who
And,
was he, the singer of Catholic discipline?
oh, yeah, that would be great if it was Kick Boy Face. But it wasn't Kick Boy Face.
Wasn't he a janitor at one of the punk clubs at one time?
Yeah, he was. He was at I think, the original Mask, and we were at the second Mask. His name was Jerome Seven.
Uh-huh.
And later he got all the New Wave theaters out of the garbage and gave them to these rich people who are still handling it.
Oh, that's just too bad. Which is where we're going to end up. But they did finally put out a Catholic discipline album, finally, and it's wonderful.
It is great.
It's too bad that there's not more of their stuff out there. And Black Randy. So he went back and
Black
dug up
Randy
some
was
Black
one of my
Randy.
boyfriends. He used to
Really?
live with me. Yeah.
Really? I thought he was gay.
No, he wasn't gay. He
Oh,
was
I
a
love-
junkie.
Tra-
He was a junkie, but he
He
wasn't
sings
gay.
the song "Trouble at the Cup."
Trouble at the cup. Trouble
Right.
at the cup.
Yeah, and then he sang "Loader with a Butter" before there was phone sex.
Yes, yes. I'm a loner with a boner.
And a
Anything
bit
you
of
want to
telephoner.
Can I have a Coke?
Yeah,
Coke, please.
and then we we can sing the songs. We probably can't play them without violating somebody's copyright.
Yes.
But "Loner with a Butter" and "I'm Gonna Telephoner," that was a great song.
It was a great song.
And that was before it was like kind of prophesy. It was a prophetic song.
Yes.
It was about the coming of phone sex in the future.
Yes.
Which was
and
a thing.
Randy was one of those guys who worked in a phone room.
Oh, really?
He worked in a phone room, and he was one of those shyster guys who'd say, "Oh, I'm going to give you
Right.
some ink. You're
Right.
going to buy some ink from me for your ink printer."
Right. I
And
used
then
to do
they'd
that
send
too.
you 100,000 gallons of ink, and you'd be like, "I only ordered one."
Right. I did a phone solicitation as well. I sold parabolic sun tracking units, which are it's basically solar panels, and I sold a bunch of other stuff too. That was a job. If you were good at it, if you were a good con man, you could really make a little bit of money. And I did. I made a little bit of money, but I'd burn out and I'd get ear infections from sitting on those filthy phones.
Oh,
and
Lord.
it was gross. So anyway, now New Wave Theater. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about what punk rock was then, though. Punk rock then wasn't like hardcore punk then. It was like anything that wasn't Led Zeppelin they would call punk rock
Yes.
and throw you out of the party because you were listening to the wrong stuff.
Right.
Playing the
And they
wrong
wouldn't
stuff.
give you any cocaine.
And they wouldn't give you any cocaine. Right. And they basically, then it became hardcore. But New Wave Theater, hardcore punk. Now the only thing anyone thinks is punk rock is hardcore punk.
people
Playing
spitting.
the Ramones really fast.
Yeah.
Playing.
I never thought of the Ramones as punk rock.
Really.
No.
That's their idea of punk rock is that rather than any kind of an endless freak out doing anything that's weird.
Right.
But then, so that was New Wave Theater, though. That was New Wave Theater's idea of punk rock.
No,
was-
New Wave Theater was
No?
about New Wave.
Just New
And
Wave.
I was the person who brought in the punk.
Oh, okay.
So it was run by this guy whose name was David Jove.
Uh-huh.
And it turns out, we found out later, he was the guy who got the Rolling Stones arrested for drugs.
Oh, really?
So he
the
was a
narc.
covert CIA
Oh,
narc.
really?
Right. So I wasn't sure if he was really there to destroy punk rock
Right.
or to progress it in the end. So,
Wow.
he
the CIA started New Wave Theater.
basically, I don't know if they did. I mean, he was desperate to be famous and rich.
Uh-huh.
He almost did it, but
Right.
then he killed Peter Ivers, basically.
Uh-huh.
So, but okay, so
We'll get to Peter later.
New Wave Theater was the first punk TV show in the world, and we broke X, Black Flag, The Circle Jerks, 45 Grave, TSOL, basically every band that's still
Angry
got
Samoans.
Yes, we broke all those bands. We gave them all their first shows. You can see this stuff on YouTube.
Yeah,
There's
it's all
20
there. It's free.
Yep, 25 episodes free online. And I was with them for 3 years. Myself and my partner, Richard Skidmore, did all the booking for all the shows. David booked all the light stuff,
Uh-huh.
all the stuff that's not punk,
Uh-huh.
and I booked all the punk, and Richard booked all the reggae punk kind
Uh-huh.
of offspring. But like he also booked we managed the Speed Queens back then,
Uh-huh.
Eva O.
Uh-huh.
So we were always like locked into the scene because I had started out booking at King's Palace, which
Uh-huh.
eventually became Raji's.
Uh-huh.
So
Which is gone now.
Which is gone now after the earthquake.
The basement's still there, isn't it?
No,
No?
everything's gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the earthquake took the whole Hotel Hastings out.
Oh, okay.
I thought there was a charge underneath it, which helped take it out.
I was in Raji's, I saw a fire hose there. That
Yes.
was the last thing that I saw there.
Yes.
And Trotsky Ice Pick and fire hose.
Mm-hmm. We used to book all that.
Right. Oh, really? That's before I knew you. That's when I was in art school.
Mm-hmm.
So how did New Wave Theater come about? It was a public access show.
Mm-hmm. I saw an ad in Music Connection that said wanted band for a TV show, and I took my trusty suitcase filled with cassette tapes and went over and played him some punk rock,
Oh, really?
and that's how it became New Wave Theater, pretty much. 'Cause
Wow.
he wasn't really thinking about New Wave at all. It just morphed into that.
Right. You didn't have to pay the bands.
No. He promised to pay them, but he never did.
So it was on public access, and then how did it end up getting picked up by Night Flight? That was basically a public access local show, and then it got picked up by a national network television show called Night Flight.
I'm not quite sure how any of that happened. David did a lot of blow,
Uh-huh.
and that's how you make fast friends in Hollywood. So he was hanging around with all the SNL people. John Belushi was a regular hanging
Right.
out with us. I think that's how it happened. He was using the connections of my friends to get ahead.
Uh-huh.
So Peter Ivers he hired because he wanted to be connected to Peter's friends,
Uh-huh.
like Harold Ramis.
Uh-huh.
So all that came to be, and that's how we all ended up on Night Flight.
Night Flight. And did that give you any benefit? What did you do on the show? What did
I
you
was
do?
the
You
booker and creative liaison, and I handled all the paperwork that had to be signed before you could go on the air, which he would wait until the very last minute, just before you were going to get on the air, for you to read the contract.
Which meant you got nothing.
You got screwed, yeah.
Right. That's a good idea.
I didn't think so. I fought every step of the way to try
Really?
to make it fair.
Really? Nothing.
And me and Peter were really about the kids. We were really
Right.
in it because we really liked the scene and we liked the people and we liked the way it was going and we saw change. David was into making it in Hollywood,
Right.
so he wasn't really into it for the pure reasons that I think we were.
Well, you know, one of the problems is if you try to make things fair, then they never get done. You know? Then it never even happens, you know? And what are some of the stories of New Wave Theater? What is like the thing that sticks out, like with a band or a happening or a thing?
I think that probably what sticks out the most is you got to see the California Slam pits on New Wave Theater, so that when Fear, who we discovered, went on to be on Saturday Night Live, all the kids acted out exactly the way they saw on New Wave Theater, causing $250,000 worth of damage and ending punk rock on TV pretty much altogether.
Yeah, I remember when I first started to go to punk rock shows, the slam pits were more dangerous because you didn't go in a circle, you went in just a chaotic kind of roundabout in various ways, and then it became we were all going in a circle together. But then, when it first started, my first punk gigs I went to, it was just going back and forth randomly and running into everybody. Then it became the circle skanking, and the stage diving. And then I was pretty much out of it at a certain point. At a certain point, the cops shut down punk rock, and then the only place in LA, and then the only place where you could go to see it was Fender's, because they actually got a lawyer and sued the police department and got a restraining order against the police unless the police were actually called in.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually got a lawyer and fought the police off to keep them away from the punk rock shows. And that's why Fender's was able to keep going into the 80s. And then it became completely inoffensive by that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, people, you know, they say, well, it's listening to the stuff on MTV now, they say, oh, this is punk rock. But that's not why punk rockers were doing it then. Punk rockers were doing it because it was the most uncool, unhip thing they could possibly do. People would get mad at you and spit at you and throw things at you when you walked down the street or played the music. And now it's the hippest, coolest thing to do. So it's completely the opposite of what it was.
It's so funny.
You know?
I just came from Melrose where I took in some punk rock clothing to a store, and he told me to go back home and paint over it and put some glitter on it. And even though it looks like I bought it for $40 or $50, he's going to sell it for like $800.
Really?
Like, right.
Just yeah, you should sell it for $800. You should get the $800, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a miracle that New Wave Theater even got made at all. And I look at it and just go, and the appreciation of those bands was nothing then. Mm-hmm. Nobody cared. Nobody.
First
now
time
it's
I
like
saw
sacred.
when I first saw PIL, people hated John. I was at the first press conference, May 4th, 1980, at 4:30 in the afternoon at
Really?
Le Dome. And the Dome was owned by Ringo Starr. And it's funny, I talked to Martin Atkins, the drummer for Pill, about it recently, and he said, oh, that's Le Dome. Isn't that where I paid $14 for a bottle of Perrier water? And the first press conference that PIL had, all the writers were there, like Craig Lee and Melissa Cohen from La Di Da, and they were attacking John mercilessly.
Selling out.
Because he sold out and he wasn't in the Sex Pistols anymore. So I was defending John, so I got called a lot of names.
Right.
And New Wave Theater was considered selling out.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So
wow.
We were mistreated because I had sold out and put the bands on TV. And people like the Germs couldn't go on my TV show because that would be selling out.
Really? And that's why we don't have a tape of the Germs on New Wave Theater. Oh,
Mau Mau's the same thing.
Oh, that's so
Paul
sad.
Picasso told them that they'd be selling out if they went on New Wave Theater.
Oh, that sucks, man.
So that was kind of why, I was treated really badly because I was doing punk rock. And don't even talk about black people. They just don't even acknowledge me to this
you
day.
Were like black and a punk rocker, so you were
now
like
they don't, now
scum,
they dye
scum of the earth.
Now they dye their hair exactly like mine and think they're hip.
Right. Yeah, though that was, I remember when we used to go to Disneyland, they wouldn't allow punk rockers in, so we'd say we were new wave, and we would leave our mohawks down, and then when we'd get inside, we would put our mohawks up using their hand dryers and Aquanet to get our mohawks, because once you were inside you were safe. They probably weren't going to throw you out. But I think in '79 they had a punk rock day where the Minutemen and other punk bands played at Disneyland, and then that was it. They decided no more punk rock.
And then they started persecuting the goths and said no goths were allowed out in Disneyland.
No goths. Yeah, that's amazing.
When I started the punk museum, I made sure that it was from 1974 to 1984, so I wouldn't have to put up with any of the hoi polloi.
Yeah, that's where my record collection is, from about 74. I go back into the 60s and get some of the weird punk bands that were there that weren't supposed to be punk rock yet, which is, of course, Blue Cheer.
My favorite.
And there was Pentagram, and there was Kim Fowley, and there was the Stooges, of course.
I got Kim
and
Fowley.
Many other weirdos that were just running around, that weren't the Sonics, that weren't supposed to be punk rock, but were somehow playing punk rock. The Monks, the 13-foot elevators. They were playing punk rock then. For whatever reason, in 1968, when there was not the word yet, punk rock. Punk rock, actually, the word was coined in 1964 to describe the Rolling Stones. He described them as an English rock writer who used the term to describe...
Not Caroline Coombs?
I'm not sure who it was, and he said that the Rolling Stones were young punks playing punk rock. Then it became like a term to describe outsider rock, and then it got stuck to the Ramones in Punk Magazine, and then people started calling certain forms of music punk rock, you know, and... but there were lots of people playing it beforehand. Frank Zappa said it became punk rock when you could dress up to it. But you know, and he was an honor. Frank Zappa's an honorary punk rocker.
Yeah, but he didn't approve of punk rock.
He didn't approve of punk rock.
I just did a interview with someone who did a new Frank Zappa movie, and he did not approve.
It was kind of sad
because it was taking over his space. Where
right.
He just cleared his space. But the thing about Frank was he was an excellent orchestration man, so
right.
He was really going in a different direction, and he thought punk was vapid because it was like 4 notes.
Right. Well,
he was doing such eloquent work, it kind of made him feel bad that something so simple would get a lot of attention after he worked so hard to build
complexity into rock.
Right.
Right. Which he did. But you know, the spirit of it is still punk rock. It's like, you know, you go back to Donovan being so effeminate and how offensive that was to Joe Sixpack. You know, that Donovan was wearing flowers, you know, and later on people were offended. It's just as offensive as later on the green mohawk, which would get you spit on and beat up. And in fact, I remember I had a good friend, Kenny. You know Kenny, the red beard, the long red beard. He was beaten with a beer bottle once, and he almost beaten to death. And he was gay too, so that was even stranger to him. I remember he was a big, frightening looking guy, and they used to hire him as a bouncer, but he was very sweet because he was gay. He was effeminately gay, and they used to hire him as a bouncer. They'd just tell him, just stand there and look scary. Don't talk. As soon as he talked, as soon as he opened his mouth, it was like, oh, this guy is going to cuddle me to death. You know, this would be his worst weapon. So he was wonderful. But I remember that I'm telling you the story of just being beaten, and I was too when I looked that way. That people would throw things at me, yell at me. The police would come into shows and throw in tear gas and then start hitting us with clubs. So, you know, this
is all over music.
This is all over music, and someone who had a different haircut than everyone else did
but
at
then,
the time.
you know, just before that, the hippies went through it with their long hair.
Right.
So there's always going to be a bunch of, I would say Nazis, but I hate to put down Nazis. There's something so much worse than Nazism in the American way.
Where do you know, it's like, it's almost like now, it's like the generation now is a generation that's too lazy to think up their own subculture. It's like they pick from the other subcultures. I'll be a hippie, I'll be a punk rocker, I'll be new wave, I'll be this. And same with music, too. It's like like alternative rock was recycling like punk rock, you know? And it's like everything's recycled now. There's nothing new. Rave music comes from early Throbbing Gristle, you know? And for those who don't know, that was a punk band before punk was just fast guitars.
Exactly.
And that they still had that evil antagonism in their music.
Well, I think punk is basically being antagonistic of people that are wrong. There's a great
definition of punk rock. But tell us one story about New Wave Theater and what it was like to where was it filmed? Where was New Wave Theater
We shot
filmed?
in a lot of different locations. We started off at Public Access, and then we moved into a rehearsal studio, and we had these huge cameras public access cameras that weighed like about 100 pounds. And whenever I did, because I've been with public access for 35 years, since the day they started, and we'd be lugging around these lighting kits and these giant cameras. Now I can do all that with my phone.
Right.
But I mean,
Better quality.
Yes, better quality, and well, I wouldn't say that because I've seen a lot of footage from Pat Ivers and Emily Armstrong, who shot the New York punk scene.
Right.
And their footage is pristine. There's Sid Vicious and Stiv Bader's footage, because those big cameras were really serious.
Well, there was something to say. There's something to say about that, but there's. So you moved into this, and what was the story that like sticks out from New Wave Theater? Was there any particular story or
No, it's
band?
like for me it was like a day job. It's like your job is, my job would be we went out at least 3 nights in a 5-night period. Every other night we were out, and we'd go out to 3 or 4 different clubs and pick 3 or 4 different bands for New Wave Theater.
Right.
And we would shoot in a circle and just move the bands clockwise and keep the equipment in one place. And we would shoot 8 bands a night.
Wow.
And we shot 300 bands.
Wow. So and is all of that preserved, or is much of it gone?
There is a lot of it. When David Jove is such an evil person, the director, when he died, he sold the rights to New Wave Theater to 2 different sources who will be in court the rest of their lives trying to say that it belongs to them.
Right.
He mortgaged New Wave Theater against Howard the Duck.
Oh, really?
2.
Really?
He thought that Howard the Duck 2 would be like such a hit. He was willing to put away all the work we did. He didn't have any respect for punk.
Right.
He just thought that we were wrong.
And the tapes themselves were 3/4-inch tapes, and
They
they ended up in a trash can.
They ended up in a trash can. Some of them did. Some of them were sold to. He sold a bunch of stuff to Rhino Records. So there is a Best of New Wave Theater 1 and 2 at Rhino Records. He never paid us.
They don't have the tapes.
He never paid me, and he never paid Peter Ivers, and Peter Ivers was backing it too. He killed Peter Ivers.
Okay, so Peter Ivers, the host of New Wave Theater, was murdered.
Yes.
In his home.
Yes.
So what happened there?
Somebody, thank you, honey. Somebody came in the middle of the night and beat him to death. But it was somebody he knew.
Who was it?
We think it was David Jove.
Oh, really?
Because we quit 3 days before, and David had cut a deal with, finally, his beloved Saturday Night Live people. He was just trying to cut a deal with them. And he finally cut a deal, and they were going to do a show called The Top. And The Top was going to be Peter Ivers, I was going to do the booking, Chevy Chase, all this Belushi, all those people wanted to be involved, and I was like, no, I don't want to be part of that. Because we had gotten tired of the cocaine. There was like this nuclear cocaine that Belushi was bringing in, and that was making the director crazier and crazier. And so when we said, no, we don't want to work with you anymore, then Peter ended up dead, and then he called me up and said, ooh, beware the New Wave Theater murders. And I said, come on over. I'm waiting for you.
Wow.
And he never showed up at my house.
I heard that they were their Night Flight picked up New Wave Theater, and they were pitching the show with John Belushi as the host, and it was going to happen, but then John Belushi died, and then no one was interested.
No.
It's not true?
Not true. John Belushi and David were the coke people. So that was causing a lot of trouble. And, I mean, in those days, people like Belushi could do blow in front of a cop and they would never arrest him. What happened was, Peter died, so they didn't have anyone to make the original deal with. Peter was famous. He was from Harvard. They were all his connections. Everything was his connections. So he lost Peter because he would lose his connections because we quit.
So this was the CIA narc, the guy that was the CIA narc.
Yeah.
So Peter Ivers was basically killed by the CIA.
Yeah, basically. Basically by the narc.
Wow.
But what had happened was we just didn't want to work with him anymore because he was always pulling guns on us.
Who?
David Jove.
Really?
We'd be riding to shoot New Wave Theater, and he'd pull a gun out and point it at us.
Wow.
And he did it like about 10 times.
Wow.
And me and Peter, and threaten us all the time. That's why it was finally like, just come on over.
With what? He was what would he want you to do or not do? Or?
Just be high and just pull the gun out. He was just high on coke all the time. He was like a nightmare to deal with. And we didn't want to do blow with him. We were like, we don't want to do that guy's blow. We called him that guy. We don't want to hang out with that guy. We don't want to do his blow. We don't want anything to do with that guy. Oh, God, we're not going there. That guy might be there.
Wow.
So we had gotten to that point by the time Peter died. And Peter and I had quit because we were going to... I had met John Lydon, and we were going to quit and go to London and start New Wave Theater over there. That was our plan.
That was the plan, but it didn't fall. It didn't work out.
Didn't happen.
That's too
and the
bad.
reason that New Wave Theater, at that point, it became the top. He replaced Peter. He had been planning to kill Peter.
Really?
Because he had already gotten this guy named. He'd gotten this other guy as a co-host, and that co-host guy was getting more and more work, so that when Peter died, he immediately put that guy in Peter's place. So it was bait and switch. And then what happened was the Top started, and the Top did their first day shooting, and it was Chevy Chase, Fear.
Really?
Fear and the Hollies.
Where's the footage?
Fear and the Hollies. And because David thought the Hollies were punk. That's how he was not with us. Fear, yes, but and I brought Fear. So what happened was the first show, Chevy Chase comes out in a fake mohawk. And he's interviewing Fear, and he's making fun of Fear.
Oh,
and
really?
Durf Scratch kicked him square in the balls.
Really?
And the other guy that was on it was Andy Kaufman.
Oh.
So it was going to be Andy Kaufman.
Where's this footage,
man? It's going to be Andy Kaufman. I've got the print stuff I can show you. It's going to be Andy Kaufman and John Belushi wanted in, and Chevy Chase. So Chevy got kicked in the balls, and that was it. That was the end of the Top.
Oh, really?
The first show.
It was due to Chevy Chase's balls.
Yep.
That pussy.
So that's how all that happened.
So there's no footage. If you have print stuff of that, definitely take pictures of it, and we'll see if we can put it on this podcast. But man,
look on my New Wave Theater page on Facebook.
Okay. I haven't even seen that. You have to send me the link. Okay, I'm going to look that up. I'll try to link all that stuff. But that's just, that is just amazing. And I wish, was there a film of Fear playing? Did Fear play and get shot there? After Chevy Chase kicked in the ball, that was the end, huh? That's too bad, man. That's,
also,
that's a drag.
David had gone crazy on cocaine by then. So he's making all these impossible demands to everyone, and nobody wanted to deal with him. They made 2 shows, it was over.
That was it. And no bands got
Andy
filmed?
Kaufman came from the other one.
So you met Andy Kaufman there, or?
Yeah, Kaufman wanted me to be his backup singer, and I was like, I want $25, and he said, I'm not paying you, and I went, see you later.
$25. So where can we find you? Where can we find your band? Your band is called what now?
Apollinaire. I sing Kurt Weill, Alberto Brecht, Marlene Dietrich, Billie Holiday. It's my straight band, but I'm still a punk girl singing this music. Right. So it's
and the band before was brilliant too. What were they called? Where you have the album, the Dada 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 Dada. What was
yes, Trouble for Nora.
Trouble for Nora. I have the record.
Which was named after Johnny Rotten's wife, Nora. It really wasn't. It was named after Durf Scratch's wife, Durf Scratch's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Her name is Nora Novak.
Durf was a member of Fear.
Yes, he was. And
And if you want to find the Tequila Mockingbird singing that song, go to YouTube and type in data, data, data.
no, it's called Computer.
Computer, Trouble for Nora.
Trouble for Nora. And then I had a band, Big Mucka Muck. And then I had Tequila and the Actual Matrix, which is getting back together, actually, after 12 years. He's living in Canada,
Really?
but we're going to write together from long distance. We write a lot of music for film.
You could be working on a cruise ship just singing stuff, living a very happy life out on a cruise ship all day, singing old standards,
Yeah, I don't think I'm the kind of girl they want, though. They want the young, fresh, whatever. Anyway,
you could sing blues, you could sing all that stuff, all those normal songs. You sing really well. You can fit the part.
Yeah, right now I'm busy. I'm busy trying to make money.
I'm busy trying to make money. I would end up on a cruise ship as a comedian someday. We will see. But they're looked down upon. Cruise ship comedians, the other comedians look down upon them. So there was a big studio. Where was the studio? Where was it?
What, New Wave Theater?
New Wave Theater. Where was the studio? Is the building still there?
The last thing that we did was at the Florentine Gardens. We used that location because it was big enough to fill up. We made the $5 fee at the door.
Really?
And
that's where I saw the Misfits and 45 Grave and the Lewd and Crucifix and Discharge on the same bill, and the Panty Shields, who unfortunately do not have a record out, and no one's dug up any demo tapes of them. I'm waiting for that. So there's anyone out there that has the tape of the Panty Shield, who are a hardcore punk band with a saxophone. And they opened up, and then it was the Adams, who also disappeared, and they were wonderful, and Crucifix, and a really early gig by 45 Grave. And
she was one of my favorites that we put on New Wave Theater a million times. In every incarnation, Fox Pop, 45 Grave, Mary Sims. I've known her since she was 14 years old.
Really?
Love her.
We used to just spit on her and yell, "Show us your tits." That's what we used to do.
Oh my God.
We were going through our punk rock phase.
Poor child. I don't know how she made it through. Between that and everybody dying on heroin around her.
That's when she first was at 45 Grave. We used to see her, and then, man, I can't believe that. I just walked past Florentine Gardens now. Now it's a Mexican discotheque. I guess it always kind of was.
It always was. We just rented it out and on Tuesday nights, and they didn't care, so it was okay.
Yeah, that's just amazing. It's too bad we don't have all that footage. Is there other footage that's not out there on YouTube?
There's tons of footage that some rich people have. They wanted me to tell them who all the bands were on New Wave Theater.
Oh, really?
But they didn't want to pay me.
Uh-huh.
And I figured since I already got fucked once.
Why?
Right. So they put out all the tapes with no names.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't even know where that stuff is. I've got a lot of stuff on video, but most of it's, once somebody puts it out on a CD, a bootleg, or officially, it just all goes up onto YouTube. So, which is great. So if you people out there want to know what we're talking about, who don't know what we're talking about, go to YouTube and before it gets too corporate and check out New Wave Theater. And sometimes I guess if they'll say the name of the bands on there, people in the comments.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen, you'll find out who they are.
You'll find out. Amazing. Well, it's too bad that stuff was lost. I guess it's not lost.
It's in the hands
kind of lost.
It's in the hands of people who don't care about rock and roll at all. They just tried to make a penny.
Right.
And then I went to, they showed some footage of New Wave Theater at Silent Movie Theater. And they acted like they wanted me to pay to get in. Tequila doesn't pay to get in. For those a show that I have that I booked for 3 years and waited 30 years for them to release.
Right.
No, I'm not paying.
Ridiculous.
So yeah, they're mercenary assholes that have
have it.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as anyone puts it out, I guess we can see what happens as more of it comes out, if it's not all out there.
It's not all out there.
You know?
There's a lot of stuff that still has time code on it.
Oh, really?
And a lot of stuff he never got around to working with. And he was also such a jerk, it was really hard to get him to respect anybody.
Where are those tapes?
The
rich people they're talking
rich
about
people have it locked away.
Locked away.
And then his daughter became a Scientologist, which makes it even more difficult to do anything with the properties.
Well, you know, there's so much of that footage out there that's lost, and you know, sometimes it ends up on YouTube, and people think it's valuable, and they want to get money for it. And
they were charging bands $400 a minute for New Wave Theater footage.
Really?
That's what the rich people were doing.
Wow. Yeah,
and we did it at public access, so it's free.
There's one song on a Flip Side compilation of the Darby Crash Band. It's him just before he died, and it's amazing. And he has the whole concert, but evidently he can't release it because of copyright and all this other junk, and everyone running around, oh, I own it, and it can't come out, which is too bad. There's a lot of great stuff that people would like to get their hands on. And at Flip Side, too, they have a lot of stuff that they recorded. I don't know. They started to put stuff out for a while, but it's gone. And then also the guy Target Video in San Francisco, he didn't back up any of his stuff, and then his studio burned down, and everything, Devo playing in 1978 in San Francisco, all that stuff gone forever. Doing great.
Wow. Joe Reese is an old friend of mine. Like, I actually went to visit him before we started New Wave Theater and watched how he did his operation. When I came back, David had booked what he thought was New Wave Theater, which was a bunch of old hippies.
And what happened there?
Nothing. He never used those tapes, but they were hideous. I mean, he never knew the difference between real punks and what was really going on. He never knew the difference because he was really in it to get famous. He wasn't in it to. He was promoting himself, not.
Right. It was just a vehicle. He saw it as a vehicle to get him some money or something like that.
Yeah, and like Peter and I were really into it, and Peter loved it. So like, he had tried to keep me and Peter apart by making all kinds of hassles between us, but Peter and I never fell for it. And then he got even more mad because he couldn't separate us. I was in Peter's band, Vitamin Pink stage show before he died.
Really?
Which had Harold Ramis's daughter Violet in it, and just. But Peter was a playboy.
So what's like the last? What did you want to say about New Wave Theater and that whole experience and that whole thing?
Well,
how would you sum it up, and what would you want to say about it, just for like?
I would say it was really super creative time, and I was really happy to be part of it. Peter and I were best friends, and we really knew what was going on, and we really respected it, and we were. Before I met Peter, he was already financing a lot of the original punk bands, helping them get their records made, like Cabaret Voltaire. He was already supporting that before he joined New Wave Theater. So he was already a punk before it started.
Right.
David was the only one who wasn't a punk.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, his daughter's a Scientologist, and her name's Lily Hayden. She's a very famous violinist.
Oh, really?
She's played with Led Zeppelin, and
really,
she's very famous, and she's a lovely girl. But I listened to her on Steve Jones's show a couple years ago, and she really hated punk rock because it took her dad away from her.
Oh, really?
Because we were doing New Wave Theater, he wasn't with his 5-year-old, you know. So she saw it as different. So, like, I don't think she's into making sure that I get paid ever.
Ah, well, that sucks. So we can find the Punk Rock Museum on Facebook.
You can find lapunkmuseum.com, and you can find it LA Punk Museum on Facebook, Berlin Punk Museum, San Francisco, London, New York, Scotland, Las Vegas Punk Museum News on Facebook, and Punk TV. And I'm also doing a series of punk film at Beyond Baroque in Venice starting this month. First show I'm doing is Desperate Teenage Love Dolls on my birthday, May 26th. And so...
And there's a New Wave Theater Facebook page.
Yes, there is. There's
Be sure and send me the link to that. And
Yeah.
when I put this all up, I'll try to get all the links in there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Tequila. This is Mark Selzer for Pod Potatoes and New Wave Theater at the Punk Museum saying goodbye.